very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to each and every one of you who have gathered here to be a part of RedTeam Security Summit 2021. Today, in this session, we have Mr. Manoj Vijayan. Mr. Manoj is an industrial control system engineer with 18 plus years of experience in handling projects and maintenance of control systems and ICS cybersecurity in oil and gas facilities. He has specialization in distributed control systems, PLCs, SCADA, industrial instrumentation, physical metering system, etc. for oil and gas sector. Mr. Manoj holds a master's degree in information, network and computer security and a bachelor's in electronics and instrumentation engineering. We are glad to have such intelligent presence at our summit. So welcome, sir, to RedTeam Security Summit 2021. The stage is all yours.
Thank you, Camelia, for the nice introduction, and good afternoon or good evening to everyone. I'm Manoj, working as control system engineer for an oil and gas facility, and I take care of the control system maintenance and projects as well as deal with the control system security. Today, the topic that I'm going to give is related to the industrial control system, threat modeling, and risk assessment. A small intro about myself, and I'm Manoj. I'm working as control system engineer. I hold a master's degree in information network and computer security and a bachelor's degree in electronics and instrumentation. I hold ISO 27001 information security management lead implementer certification and the NIST cybersecurity frameworks. Today I'll be discussing about threat modeling and risk assessment that can be conducted on an industrial control system. Before we go into that, let me just give an intro about the critical infrastructure. Basically, the European Commission, EC, defines an infrastructure as critical when it is so vital that if disrupted or destroyed would have a serious impact on the health, safety, security, or economic well-being of citizens or effective functioning of a government. Typical examples are nuclear facilities, oil and gas facilities, power plants, water production, wastewater treatment, etc. Basically, any of these industries can be considered as critical because outage of any of them or a damage of any of them could result in disaster or even safety concerns related to the health and environmental impacts. And even it can impact on a local community based on the type of the incidents that's happening. So when it comes to industry control system, they can be classified into different systems, like DCS being one of the most popular system. And there are SCADA system, there are safety instrumented system, burner management system, and other small PLC logic control systems. So this is a typical architecture of a DC distributed control system where there will be sensors and there will be a controller that will be communicating with the HMI that gives the indication and control of the plant. So this is a typical diagram for a distributed control system. And the main components of a DCS are operator workstation, where the operator monitors the plant, and an engineering workstation, where an engineer would be configuring the logic or the graphics related to this DCS distributed control system. And it has a data highway through which the operating network communicates with the control network. The control network is the network where the controllers are lying. Actually, the controllers are connected to the control network, which is interfaced with the operation network where the human-machine interfaces are available. The operator would be accessing the human-machine interface or the operator workstation to control the plant. So let's go into the design concept of a control system in critical infrastructure. So basically, there is a concept called LOPA, which is layer of protection analysis, normally applied in critical infrastructure for designing the control system. And basically, it is mainly used for implementing safety systems like ESD system or better management system or fire and gas system. Before I go into the details of the risk assessment or the topic that I'm planning to deliver today, I just wanted to give you a brief idea about a comparison between the ICS and corporate environment. So basically, the ICS or industry control system are meant for handling a critical task like controlling or monitoring a plant, whereas IT corporate systems are basically for management purpose. Like they will be having data centers where so many services like mails or other applications will be handled at a corporate level. So when we see at the level, I mean, like normally when it comes to the security part of any IT systems, we do deal with CIA, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When we look at the corporate IT side, confidentiality is having the highest priority, then integrity, and then the availability. Whereas when it comes to industry control systems, the priorities are different. With industry control system, the priority is highest for availability and reliability because it is all related to the safety of the plant, safety of the people at the plant, or the safety of the people or the community around the plant. So availability or the reliability of the control system has a higher priority than the confidentiality of the data or the integrity it holds. So when we look at an example of an industrial network, we can see there are so many levels within an industrial network if it is segmented properly. Whereas a commercial network, it will be having a local subnet, a site backbone, and a wider area network. So when we compare between a corporate IT and industrial IT, let's say the comparison based on compromise of a system. So the risk associated with the corporate IT, if it is compromised, it's not life-threatening. Whereas industry control system compromise can result in a life-threatening scenario, or it is even more critical that it can lead into some catastrophic events that can affect the community around or even a nation. So when we look at the availability and reliability criteria, availability is not a very important factor because the downtime is acceptable in IT network, whereas in industry control system networks, the downtime is not acceptable because it will lead to loss of production, and that in turn is affecting the business. And architecture and traffic types in ICS is the voice. I mean, in the IT sector, it could be voice, video, data, or business IT infrastructure, whereas here in OT, it is basically it's real-time data, and it is all related to the controls. It is related to safety, motion, time synchronization, etc. And interfaces for the IT, basically they have minimal interfaces like the operating system, applications, keyboard, mouse, so and so things. Whereas the interfaces in an OT environment could be like PLC, servers, sensors, switches, actuators, and a lot of things like that. And communication, also it will be a simple network, whereas in OT it will be a complicated network with a lot of proprietary protocols. So let's have a look at the famous attacks that has happened on ICS in the past years. Like in 2010, there was the Stuxnet attack, which is considered as one of the most prominent attack that has happened on an ICS system. It was Stuxnet that has happened in a nuclear facility in Iran that has damaged. That has resulted damaging a lot of centrifuge for the uranium enriching facility. It would have resulted in a catastrophe. The success was a kind of a targeted malware. Other incidents, it was Shamoon, which happened in a refinery in Saudi Arabia. And Shamoon has happened 2 times in 2014. And many other incidents has happened. Black energy that has happened in Ukraine, Java Mill. In Java Mill, the steel mill, there was some cyber attack. The black energy has happened in Vanacry, Destroy, and quite a lot of prominent attacks are there. And this is this typical way how Stuxnet has happened. It has entered into the system through a USB, an infected USB that has come through a vendor. And this USB storage device had a malware called Stuxnet that didn't do anything. Normally the antivirus could find any non-signatures of worms or malwares, but actually this particular worm, Stuxnet, didn't do anything. It was totally inert and it was not identified by any antivirus in that system. Basically, this Stuxnet was looking for a Siemens system in the network. Once it identified the Siemens protocols in the network, it started propagating and started doing its function by increasing and decreasing the speed of the centrifuge by giving raw commands from the PLC, and at the same time giving a wrong feedback to the HMI for the operator. So the plant operator will see that everything is normal there, whereas at the field, it was really damaging the equipment. So what are the challenges in implementing security in ICS environment? Basically, let's look at the antivirus. Sometimes, the antivirus are not created with ICS in mind, and it's quite possible that antivirus solution can even delete unknown file licenses and can quarantine critical files that serve the critical functions of the ICS actually. So before implementing, before updating an antivirus DAT file, basically we have to make sure that it is being approved by the vendor. Normally, the best practice is to download only the patches or the DAT files that are approved by the manufacturers of the control system. And the technology support for lifetime for ICS equipments are up to 15 years. So now a system could be supplied with Windows 10, and that is expected to run for 15 years, for the next 15 years. That's now normally ICS agreements are like ICS agreement with vendors are. It will be supported for up to 15 years actually. So basically what would happen is that this operating system would become obsolete in a few years, and there won't be any patches available to update the system. So the technology support lifetime is an important factor, and it is another challenge in the implementation of security in ICS actually. OS patch management, as I have mentioned, when the OS is becoming obsolete, there won't be any patches available, and the operating system has to be upgraded. And in an industrial environment, it is not always possible that we can upgrade an operating system, because there should be the industrial control system application that should be also updated to the latest version of the operating system. So most cases, patching an OS is also a difficult thing, because sometimes a patch could fail and could create disasters, like restarting after installing a patch. It could restart the control system, PC, something like that, it can lead to outage of the whole plant, resulting in production losses. And testing and all the audit methods, like we cannot do like certain pen testing cannot be done on live ICS environment. Live ICS environment basically because of low processing threshold of the ICS equipments like PLCs and all. So let's say that when we are performing an Nmap or an SS scan on this network for discovery, it can result in a lot of traffic that could basically trip a plant or shut down a plant due to the system failure. And other challenges are secure system development. Uh, Basically, the ICS technologies are way behind the IT technologies, because they cannot be updated on everyday basis because that's not really practical. So securing such a system is not really going to be easy. So let's look at an architecture for an ICS actually. So basically, as I've explained earlier, the ICS would be having, at a lower level, they would be having a lot of controllers that would be controlling the plant, and these controllers would be connected to a switch, and that is connected to a lot of computers that are used for monitoring. So basically, this is a typical architecture. Maybe there could be a firewall in between for protection, but this won't be enough in today's scenario. Actually, a typical security approach will be employing the defense in depth, where we have a lot of security appliances in between, a lot of security features added, like firewalls, intrusion detection system. We can have a SIM in place for even monitoring, vulnerability management system, and a lot of other security appliances can be introduced into the ICS network for better protection with a better defense in depth method. So when it comes to securing the ICS network, ISA, that is it was earlier known as Instrument Society of America, now is International Society for Automation, has created a model and that segments the ICS network in the best manner to implement security in different levels. The body model classified the system into different zones, like this cell zone, manufacturing zone, and enterprise zones, where level 0 at the bottom we can see that it's related. It is the process control level, where the controllers and the sensors are all connected. And level 1 is having the basic control system. Okay, yes, really the controllers, the major controllers like the DCS controllers, controllers will be coming in this level 1, and level 2 would be this supervisory control area where the HMIs and the servers will be available. And when it goes to the manufacturing zone, it is a typical name, which is V1 actually. And this could be the area. It can be areas like a DNC for connection between the lower level, like level 2, with an enterprise level. For example, an organization would be having a monitoring platform in their head office, where they will be having a lot of screens and to monitor their facility, as well as to read the data on a daily basis for their reporting purposes and all, for which they need to connect the control system at level 2 with level 4, where they would be having a lot of other management softwares. In such case, there could be a lot of security devices that need to be implemented in between. So basically, I'm not going to go into much details of each level, but basically the level 0 would be having the sensors. Level 1 would be having the basic control systems like PLCs or the DCS there. And level 2 would be having the monitoring solutions like HMI, that is the operator workstations, and the servers. Those are responsible for controlling the plants would be there in this level. And manufacturing zone. Here, we would be having the DMCs or in DMCs that would be having the historians or other connectivity servers like OPC servers placed in this level that need to be interfaced with the corporate IT network. And the enterprise zone would be having a site planning software where they will be having a management software to monitor their daily production and report management, things like that, for which they need to interface the level 2 servers through the level 3 into the level 4. And the level 5 would be normally the corporate IT infrastructure, which has connection to the internet and all. So basically the level top to bottom from level 5 to level 0, it is possible that attacks can take place if the security appliances are not in place or not properly configured. So that was an overview about, that was a typical overview of an industry control systems architecture. So the advisable security solution that can be implemented in each of these levels, like level 0, where our sensors or subsystems like PLCs are there, they can be connected to the level 1 using an industrial protocol firewall. Like there are firewalls for field bus protocols, there are firewalls for Modbus protocols. And when it comes to level 1, the basic control system, here also a lot of proprietary firewalls can be used, like the Modbus firewalls, like the basic control system, like a DCS controller can be interfaced with the subsystem, which is having a PLC. And these two subsystems would be communicating through a Modbus protocol or other protocol like OPC. And we can have a firewall introducing in between. And there should be proper network hardening done on all devices, all network devices in that area. Then when we come to the level 2, the supervisory control, there can be a lot of security measures implemented on the operator workstation, NG workstation, servers, etc. And those could be like application whitelisting, file integrity control, antivirus, anti-spyware, host intrusion prevention system, things like that. And when it comes to level 3, here basically there could be a DMC where the patch management solutions like the WSUS and disaster recovery solutions, the SIM solutions, network monitoring solution can all be put in this DMC, because these devices, these appliances would be needing some updates from a higher level like internet, for example, for the patch management or for the antivirus updates. And also for if there is a corporate SIM solution where they have a SOC that monitors the IT operations as well as the OT security, then SIM forwarders would be required and could be placed in this DMC also. Okay, let us come back to the main topic related to threat modeling, how threat modeling can be done and risk assessment can be done on an industry control system. What is threat modeling? It is a process of identifying potential threats from various perspectives, including attacker's perspective. It can be from risk perspective. It can be from a software point of view. Its purpose is to provide security control based on systematic analysis of a probable attack vector. So basically, threat modeling is the process of identifying what are the possible threats that could act on our system, especially when it is coming to the ICS. Let's analyze what are those. And what are the objectives of a threat modeling? Objectives of a threat modeling is to identify the possible threats that can act on the system, and it will propose countermeasures to strengthen the security posture of the system. So this threat modeling involves the following things, like identifying and listing the most possible attack scenarios that could affect the system. So the first thing that we should be doing as a part of the threat modeling is to identify and list what are the most possible attacks that could happen on the system. And the recommendation towards designing a secure architecture for the ICS, or the recommendation for enhancing an existing architecture or design. As a part of the threat modeling, there could be vulnerability assessments also conducted. And these threat modeling could also provide input to ICS risk assessment. And it can be used to provide a high-level security posture awareness for the management or the stakeholders on where the ICS is generally standing in terms of its security implementation. So when it comes to threat modeling, basically the concept behind the threat modeling has a few components. It is basically a cycle of components. So basically it starts with creating objectives based on this. It starts with creating objectives. What are the objectives? Why do we need this threat modeling to be done? So it can be driven by so many factors related to compliance. It can be due to through business objectives. Sorry. So the objectives can be created based on business objectives. It can be based on compliance requirements, regulatory requirements, and all. And creation, the second one is the creation of a model. So create a model that defines ICS security architecture, actually. So basically, it will be having certain graphical formats where so many inputs will be coming in. Those could be threats, and the outputs could be mitigation measures or countermeasures. So basically, the creation of a model can be done through so many threat modeling tools. One of the famous tools, TMT by Microsoft, is a wonderful tool for creation of the threat models. And when a threat model is created, we need to identify the threats by listing the most possible attack scenarios that could have effect on the system. And this threat could be the inputs to the model, and then the output of the model is the mitigation or the countermeasure. So the next one after the identifying the threat is mitigation. Identify appropriate countermeasures against each threat and identify the gaps where measures are weak or non-existent. Then validation. Validation is to reassess the implemented security measure and propose enhancement. Then again, it goes into these the newly identified or reassessed inputs will go into the model again, and it goes into the cycle. So let's look into the threat modeling steps involved. The first step is to identify the system to be threat model, like what is to be threat model. So we have seen an architecture in previous slide, like a bigger structure like a distributed control system. It can be a system to be threat model. And what is the scope for the modeling? The scopes can be a system scope, a lifecycle scope, or a boundary scope. A system scope can be a full system to be threat modeled, or it can be a specific level, like a level 0, that is like the process level, level 1 where at the control network level, or level 2 at a supervisory network level. So that is a specific level-specific system scope for threat modeling, and it can be at a component level, like a particular device, like a PLC or a particular HMI, to be threat modeled. And that was the system scope for the. We need to prepare a scope for the threat modeling. So first one, the scope can be with respect to the system, the IC system itself. It can be with respect to the life cycle related to supply chain, or it can be related to deployment, it can be related to the operation and the maintenance of the control system. And the threat modeling can be the scope can be on a boundary scope, like the control system, if it is isolated, it is considered to be more secure than when it is connected to a corporate network. So we need to find out what are the risks when we are sending data from a basic process control system to a corporate IT network. So there can be a threat modeling that can be done on what need to be going from this layer of ICS to the layer of the corporate IT. Basically, we can have unidirectional control appliances like data diodes in place, implemented to avoid any data flow coming from the IT network into the ICS network. So the threat modeling scope can be from any of these scenarios, or it can be from all of the scenarios. It can be from the system scope, lifecycle, or from the boundary. And the threat modeling, it has been basically classified into so many categories like Class L, M, and H. And Class L deals with component-oriented threat modeling, and it focuses on specific vulnerabilities concerning certain CVE number. Let's say that there is a particular PLC and the firmware is having a vulnerability, and let's say it has a rating of 9 out of 10, a score of 9 out of 10. So a threat modeling is required at a level like that. Then it is focusing on a specific vulnerability. So those are termed as Class L, and Class M is basically based on techniques. It is technique-oriented threat modeling. They are used for defending attacks without mentioning a specific CVE. So there, a CVE would not be an important factor. For example, denial of service is a typical example. That a denial of service, what is the possibility of a denial of service to happen on a particular PLC system? There, we are not looking into which denial of service and which vulnerability is going to happen. So that is the technique-oriented threat modeling. And Class H, which is concept-oriented threat modeling, and it operates on a high-level principle of information security threat without going deep into the details. So basically, they will not be looking much into the CVE scores or all. They will be doing the basic risk assessment or analysis to find out the impact on their system, or impact on their production, impact on their business due to a compromise of an ICS network. And the next step is identifying threat modeling. Using different methods, like how can we identify threats? How can we make a threat model, and what are the different methods that are in place? So there are different methods that can be used, like stride, PASTA, and try, and what other methods are also available. Then the next step would be creating a threat matrix that could be used for risk assessment in later stage. So different threat modeling methodologies available are STRIDE, and that is an application-centric approach. PASTA is there, risk-centric approach. Octave is there, and this focuses on assessing organizational risk that may be resulted from a breach information asset. And this Octave would not be, it is mainly a generic level of threat modeling, and it is at a higher level. And TRIKE is another one, and it is also a risk-based approach with risk modeling process. I'll come into the details of these models in detail. So when it comes to STRIDE, it is one of the most successful and simple threat modeling concept developed by Microsoft. And the term STRIDE is formulated from different types of threat like spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, elevation of privilege or resignation of privilege. So when we apply this model, we could find different scenarios of attacks. Like, let's say somebody is trying to spoof into the ICS network using a rogue machine. That is one of the scenario. That is a rogue machine being discovered in the ICS network. What will be the impact of such a kind of a rogue machine that is spoofing with an IP of an industrial control system workstation? So likewise, STRIDE is a very good mechanism or a modeling technique used for threat modeling. Other are like PASTA. PASTA is a process for attack simulation and threat analysis, and this is a 7-step risk-centric methodology. It provides 7 steps for aligning business objectives and technical requirements, taking into account compliance issues and business analysis. So PASTA is basically more into the business-oriented threat modeling methodology that is used. And another one is Octave, which is operationally critical threat, asset and vulnerability evaluation. And this Octave was developed by Carnegie Mellon University for United States Department of Defense. And another one is TRIKE. TRIKE is an open source threat modeling methodology that is used when security auditing for risk management from a risk management perspective. TRIKE modeling is a fusion of 2 models, namely requirement model and implementation model. I'm not going much into the details of this TRIKE, but in this session I will be concentrating more on STRIDE, how we can use STRIDE for modeling in threats. So when it comes to threat modeling, the next part would be risk assessment. And risk assessment is the first process in risk management, and an organization would be conducting a risk assessment for knowing the security. Maybe the first time they would be interested in knowing the security posture or the current present security posture, or to enhance the security posture of their present system, or even while implementing a new system into their ICS network. So the risk assessment has many steps, like system characterization. System characterization, here we will be classifying the system based on different scenarios, like it can be based on hardware, it can be based on its software, it can be based on its function that it's serving. The next step could be threat identification. What are the common threats? And the threats feeds can come from different intelligence agencies. It can come from CERT or cyber emergency response team of a nation. It can come from compliance standard, and likewise. And the third step could be vulnerability assessment. And we have to do vulnerability assessment to find out what are the vulnerabilities in our system and to mitigate them. And control analysis. Control analysis will deal with basically what are the control measures that are implemented, if there is any weaknesses in the system, are the control methods implemented properly? If it is not implemented properly, what are the new control measures to be implemented? And the next one is the likelihood determination. Let's say a threat source is there and it is having certain threat capability. But what is the possibility that it can exploit the vulnerabilities in our system, and how often it has happened in similar system like ours? So that is another factor, which is the likelihood. And impact analysis based on the availability, integrity, and confidentiality. That is basically what happens if the availability, if there is a loss on the ICS infrastructure, like a controller is lost, what could be the impact? There could be a redundant controller that could be taking charge to perform the control. And then the risk determination. And every step, it has to be documented. So these are the basic steps of a risk assessment. And when it comes to the first step is identification and evaluation of assets. Let's say what information assets we have. We have database assets, we have manual, we have software license, like that. So identification and evaluation of asset. The first one is information asset. Second one, people asset. Who are going to operate this ICS network? Who are going to maintain this ICS network? Who are the contractors who are having interface with this ICS network? Who are the security personnel, so the staffs who can do the physical security for our ICS infrastructure? Then physical assets. So we are basically discussing about identifying and valuation of the assets. What are the physical assets? We have network appliances, we have security appliances, we have servers, we have backup medias, like that. Then we have service assets like telecommunication, lighting, air conditioning, intrusion alarm system, fire alarm system, generators, UPS, software assets like engineering tools and management system, backup management system, logics or graphic development tools like that. So all these forms a part of the first step, that is identification and evaluation of the asset. So asset valuation, when it comes, the value of the asset is based on the impact of its on compromising the system. Let's say a particular safety controller in an ICS network is compromised. What could be the impact? Maybe it can result in a disaster that, because of the unavailability of the safety control system, it can result in an explosion of a nuclear facility or a power plant. So that asset is really valuable. And identification and valuation of a threat. Basically, when we look at identification and valuation of the threat, we have to look into the likelihood or the priority, the likelihood or the probability of occurrence of a threat. How often this threat can act on our system? Has it ever happened on any of our other sister concerns or a similar facility? And what could be the impact of a compromise? Would it result in a financial loss, or it would result in a damage of a facility, or it would result in a reputation damage, likewise? So the next factor is the threat capability criteria. Threat capability criteria rating is the likelihood that an attack will be successful. It doesn't mean that, let's say that we have a vulnerability in the system, and it doesn't mean that it is highly possible that an attack can happen. Vulnerability doesn't mean that an attack can happen all the time. It depends on other parameters also. Other points are like threat score. basically, a threat score is calculated based on likelihood of occurrence of an event and the threat capability. So when we spoke about the threat capability, actually, a threat to realize what are the basic requirements. For example, somebody need to attack the system, and is the attacker having the extensive knowledge or the skill to attack the system? And so it depends on a lot of criteria. So the threat capability and the likelihood of occurrence can be used for calculating the threat score. And threat levels are there, like very low, medium, high, very high. This is a 5-level threat level chart, and these can be used to in our risk assessment scenarios. So risk assessment, when it comes to the evaluation of the vulnerability, there are two important parameters that are important in evaluation of vulnerability. One is exploitability, and another one is vulnerability impact. So exploitability criteria are like it can be high if it includes vulnerability that may be triggered by a normal user during device operation. For example, in an ICS, this vulnerability can trigger into an incident even without interface of an attacker there itself. It can be due to an accidental action by an operation also. So the exploitability criteria is one of the factors, and the vulnerability impact. What would happen? What would be the impact when a vulnerability is exploited? So is it low, medium, or high? Likewise, the exploitation capability is also there, low, medium, high. So vulnerability severity is basically the vulnerability exploitability into the vulnerability impact. So the vulnerability impact and exploitability can be used to find out the vulnerability severity level. And the calculation of the risk can also be based, like the risk rating will be the asset criticality into exposure factor, and exposure factor is actually based on the threat level into the vulnerability severity level that we have discussed earlier. And I'm coming to the main part, which is the ICS risk evaluation using the STRIDE. STRIDE is basically using different techniques, how different techniques of attacks can compromise the system, like spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privileges. So a typical example of spoofing a process on the same machine, like creating a file before the real process, renaming and linking new processes, like that. So this could be one of those, spoofing a machine, like an IP spoofing, or spoofing a person, like different scenarios are there. Likewise, the second scenario related to the tampering with the network to redirect flow to another machine, things like that. And attacks on logs are another one, which can be analyzed through the R, which is repudiation. And third one is the information disclosure. Information disclosure against a particular data store. I can show a typical scenario where how STRIDE can be implemented. Basically, let's look at the screen. I'm just giving a scenario and a source of threat and the STRIDE classification, the impact if it is exploited, and what is the threat capability, likelihood, threat level, vulnerability impact, exploitability, vulnerability severity level, exposure factor, and the risk rating. So let's take one of the scenario how this stride can be implemented. For example, I'm taking from the stride STRIDE. D was standing for denial of service in the stride. So let's say a ransomware, like a WannaCry, enters into a DCS system through a USB storage device, and malware then propagates through other network, other network location, and encrypting files, leading to loss of production. Let's say that a vendor engineer, the source of threat can be through a vendor engineer, right? Vendor engineer who is coming to a critical infrastructure facility, and he's coming with a USB storage device, and if it is having a ransomware like WannaCry, basically this can spread into the system and can go. It can result in a loss of production. So the impact will be loss and availability of a critical system, and this is D. D is one of those part of the stride that we have mentioned. STRIDE. D is related to the denial of service, and another one can be like an ICS engineer. He is trying to update a PLC firmware with the latest firmware, without knowing that he has downloaded the firmware from a compromised website, crashing the PLC and resulting in the loss of production. So he has basically downloaded the firmware from a compromised website and has uploaded into the system that has resulted in crash. So here, how stride can be used is that here there is a tampering of the firmware that has happened. So what is the possibility that this can enter into the system? It can come through only a source of the threat can be an insider, and it can be an accidental action actually. And this can result in the loss of availability of the critical system. Similarly, when we look at each of these ranking, we can see how it can be ranked. So this is basically how how we can use stride for risk assessment and for threat modeling. Any questions?
Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful session. It was really thoughtful of you that you started from the architecture, then covered all the relevant topics, and they then came to the topic that we were discussing today. You covered so in detail that I think audience would have also got to know a lot more about this topic. So thank you so much, sir, being so thoughtful. That was a wonderful session. So now, audience, if you have any questions, you can ask in the question answer session that is provided in the right hand side of the screen. So if you have any questions, you can post it there. Yes, sir, we have one question.
The first question is, can you explain where IT operation controls take place in onshore and offshore in oil industry at real time? Is it an on-site or official administration workspace? All right. It's basically looking like, can you explain where IT operation controls take place in onshore? In an onshore facility or an offshore facility, there can be both IT as well as OT networks available, and each of them will be administered by separate entities or separate team. Like OT would be managed by a couple system team and IT by another team. And the question is where IT operations take place in onshore. Yes, basically, in onshore also there are email systems. There are also data transfer other systems required for office purposes in offshore. So in such cases, IT operation take place in onshore and offshore also, in addition to the OT. The next question is, can I make the changes to control and monitoring system without shutting down? If there's yes, then the business side will affect. If not, then can be risky according to cybersecurity point of view. During making any changes, if yes, then how can we tackle it? Yes. All right. It depends on the scenarios, actually. Let's say that there are different ways by which a control logic or a control, control philosophy can be implemented into a system. Some can result in catastrophic outputs. So such cases, it is basically safe to shut down the system by taking the organization's approval, the management approval, shut down the system and safely do the updates. Then restart the system, because certain processes or changes, modification can have an immediate impact on the control of the plan. So it is sometimes it is not wise to do that. So certain scenarios, shutdown would be required, but certain changes can be done online. And such cases, a task risk assessment has to be done. Like the control engineer would be who is responsible for handling this task should consult with the operation team and the management and conduct a risk assessment and identify the hazards associated with this particular task. And if the impact is low, and the sufficient control measures are in place, then basically they may go ahead with an online update. Otherwise, they will be recommending a shutdown. The next question is, how frequently threat modeling is done in ICS, and how easily the mitigation step can be implemented? The threat modeling factor, as I have explained earlier, the threat modeling it shall be a continuous process, and the driving factors or the objectives are basically driven by the business objectives. It can be driven by complaints like the national critical infrastructure compliances or the regulatory standards that can state that the threat modeling need to be done in what frequencies. But it all depends on the management's drive also. There is no way that we can decide these things without the management's involvement. Basically, the frequency can be decided during the threat modeling cycle itself, because it cannot be every day, it cannot be every month, it cannot be. It can be once in 6 months, or it can be once in a year, depending on the criticality of the environment.
I hope everyone has asked their questions. Yes. There is one more question, sir.
Can I suggest an ICS certification? Yes, there are a lot of ICS certification there. GICSP by the SANS, which is a very costly certification. There are certification offered by the Homeland Security, that is US Homeland Security. There are a lot of certifications available in the market provided by a lot of system vendors. Other IT certifications would also help in adding value to the control system security as well.
So, that is the end of the question and answer session. Thank you so much, sir. That was a productive question and answer session as well. So, thank you so much for your time. We hope we can collaborate in the future as well with you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for participating or giving us your time for RedTeam Security Summit. Thank you so much.
I should express my sincere thanks to RedTeam for giving me this opportunity to give a session here, and also the crowd who has been asking a lot of questions and listening to my session as well. A lot of things cannot be given in a short while, and I think it was a half an hour allotted for me to go almost 1 hour of the session actually. And thanks a lot for our team again and Camelia for giving a nice hosting to this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Have a nice day.
So, have a good day, sir. Thank you so much. So with this, we have come to the end of sessions in day one of RedTeam Security Summit 2021. I hope each and every one of you enjoyed these sessions, which was very informative, and we all are better informed than a day before. So I think everyone have enjoyed today, and I hope to see every one of you tomorrow as well. We have some exciting sessions coming tomorrow as well at 10:30 at sharp 10 a.m. tomorrow. We have a session of Ms. Karen Wong on the topic the future of security cloud native. So hope to see you all at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. And before that, I would like to thank you each and every one of you. I'd like to thank the speakers and last but not the least, the audience. I'd like to thank our supporting partners, our community partners, our media partners, and our tech partners as well. Our community partners are Advisory Village, Coffee with Red Team, Automotive Security Research Group, Cyber Peace Foundation, Shell, Women in Cybersecurity, Computer Society of India, Cyber Frat, DEFCON, OASP Seasides, This is India, InfoSec Diversity, Breaking Barriers, Women in Cybersecurity. Our supporting partners are CAFIT, Cyberdome, Cyberpark Calicut, GTech, Payatu. Our media partners are Bluepin, Secure Reading. Our tech partners are Hack the Box. Hope you all had a great day. Thank you so much once again to each and every one of you. Thank you all.